Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Object-Oriented Programming in Java. Today we're going to be talking about inheritance, parent classes, children classes, and how they can extend from one another. Now, if you've missed any of the prior episodes, I highly recommend going back and watching them. There's a video on classes, there's a video on class interactions. I've put a link to the first video in the description below, so you can go back and catch up on anything you may have missed. Anyway, let's start inheriting some classes. If you want to learn Java programming, or just programming in general, subscribe to this channel. We put out a lot of videos that range from beginner topics to more advanced programming concepts. Also, please like this video, share it with a friend, and write a comment as well. It goes a long way to help promote a channel like this. Now, let's get back to the video. So before we actually get into the inheritance, let's just refresh our memory on what we did in the prior videos. We have a class, cat. It has some attributes or instance variables, name, age, and sex, and then it has a bunch of methods. We want to create another class, a dog class. Now the dog class is going to have mostly the same stuff. It's going to have a name, an age, and a sex. It's going to have a toString method, which is going to print similar to the cat. It's going to have accessors and mutators, same ones actually, because they have the same variables. It's going to have a haveBirthday method. It's also going to have a talk method, but I've highlighted that in red because that talk method is going to be slightly different. The cat says meow, the dog says woof. So that's going to be a little different. The reproduce method will also be different. It'll be pretty much the same where it takes two dogs and creates a puppy. But in this case, it's not going to return a cat. It's going to return a new dog. So that one's going to be different as well. Now we're also going to add a few new things to the dog. We're going to add a variable haveBone, does the dog have a bone? And we'll add a couple of methods to allow us to either give or remove a bone to or from the dog. Now we don't like to duplicate code. That's the one thing that no developer likes to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all the stuff that's in common, and instead of putting it into the cat class or the dog class, we're going to put it into a class called animal. Animal is going to be a generic class that kind of holds all the common things, common variables, common methods that are going to be common between all of the, like the cats and the dogs and anything else. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually create the class cat and only include the unique stuff, talk and reproduce. We're not going to include name, age, sex, or any of the methods that you see in animal. Cat is going to inherit or extend. Extend is the actual terminology that we use in Java. Cat is going to inherit or extend from the class animal. When that happens, the class cat gets all the stuff that's in cat, but also gets all the stuff that's in the animal class for free. So just because we haven't declared any instance variables in cat, or we haven't declared the toString or the accessors or mutators or the haveBirthday method, cat still gets them for free. The nice thing is that when we create our dog, we don't have to do them either. All we have to do is do the unique stuff. Talk and reproduce, as we've already discussed, and then we're also going to add a variable haveBone and a couple of methods to give and remove the bone from the dog. Of course, when we have this class animal, we do kind of need to know whether the animal is a cat or a dog, right? Because it could be a cat, it could be a dog. So we're going to add another variable, type, and that will just be a string, and it'll hold the value cat or dog. So here we are back in NetBeans in my driver. We've taken out all the test code and start. We'll add some back later when we need to test. We still have pet store and we have cat. But remember, we're going to create a generic class, a parent class called animal, and cat is going to extend from animal. And we're going to take all the common code that we're going to need for both cats and dogs and move that into the animal class. So let's start by actually creating the animal class. Now let's go into cat and start pulling out code. So these instance variables will be shared between the cat and the dog. Both of them will need them. So let's put that in here. Let's go back into cat. What's next? All the constructors. We're going to want to create a dog just like we're creating a cat. So let's copy all of our constructors. Let's zap those out of there. We'll put them in here. And of course, the name of the constructor has to change to animal because we're in a new class now. We're no longer in the cat class. We're now in the animal class. The constructor name has to match perfectly. There we go. So we have our constructors. Go back to cat. Okay, toString. We're going to want to print the dog just like we're printing the cat. So let's copy that. And now let's go back into cat. All the accessors and mutators. Yep, we're going to want to use those in dogs just like we're going to use them in cats. And there they are. So now let's take a look at cat and look at this talk method. The talk method is actually going to be custom to the cat because with the dog, the dog is not going to say meow, the dog's going to say woof. So for the cat method and the dog method, we want to have two different functionalities for the method talk. So we can't bring that up to the animal parent class. But you notice, let me just get rid of this blank space. I really don't like blank space in my in the code. So anyway, you notice the name is underlined in red. Now, why is that? I told you before that if name is declared in animal, all of the children classes should get it. Well, that's true, but I need to tell Java that this cat class is inherited from the animal class. So we need to put in extends animal. Now, everything that's in animal, the cat will get. But notice it's still red. So why is that? Well, that's because the name is declared as private. So this variable, because it's private, the cat can't see it. So what's the solution? Do we make it public? Well, we could, but we really don't like to have variables public because then anybody else can change it. And we don't want everyone to have access to this variable. We just want animal to have access plus the cat. So luckily there's a third option. It's called protected. Now, when it's protected, that means that this variable can be seen by anything of type animal, anything of type cat, which is a descendant of animal, so any of the child classes, but nothing else. That's what protected means. And that's what we're going to use here. Notice this goes away now. Now, have birthday, well, this is a generic method, which is going to apply to both cats and dogs, so we're going to add it to our parent class. There it is. Now let's go back to cat. Let's see what's next. Let me get rid of the blank space. Okay, reproduce. Now reproduce is going to be a different method in cat and in dog. Because with cat, we're going to be passing in a cat and returning a new cat. With dog, we need to pass in a dog and return a new dog. So here, we're going to leave it in the cat class, not bring it up to the animal class. Of course, here you can see that there's a little bit of a problem here. We're trying to create a new cat, but what's the error? It's saying that there's no constructor like this. So what we need to do, notice in animal, we do have constructors, default constructor with no parameters, one with just the name, and one with all three parameters. Now, we need the same thing in cat. So let's create the constructor. So this is the default constructor. If we try and create a cat, what do we want to do? Well, we want to do the exact same thing as what's here, right? We don't like to duplicate code. We just want to do it all over again. So we're not going to copy and paste this. We're going to try and call this constructor from this method, from this constructor. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is we use the keyword super, which means the parent class, in other words, animal, and we're going to do no parameters. This calls the constructor on the animal class, which does all of this stuff. But notice it's still highlighted in red. Well, that's because we need a constructor with a name. So we're going to actually create the constructor on the cat class itself. And what we're going to do, again, we're not duplicating any code. All we're going to do is call this constructor with the name as a parameter. So we'll do the same thing, super, and we'll pass in our name. And of course, we want to have one with these parameters as well. So let's do that. Let's just copy this code right here. We'll copy it into cat. Of course, whoops, too many brackets. There we go. All right, now this has to be called cat, of course. And all we're going to do is we're going to call super, and we're going to pass in all these parameters. And there we go. Perfect. Well, almost perfect. Remember what we said. Because we have an animal parent class, we need to know what type of animal we're talking about. We said we're going to add another instance variable here. We're going to make it protected. And that's going to be a string, and it's going to be the type of animal. So what's it going to be? It's going to be either cat or dog. Those are the options right now. So let's go back into cat. And when we call our constructor here, we need to, before we actually call the constructor on the animal class, we need to set the type. Now remember, we made this protected, so we have access to it. So let's set the type equal to cat. Okay, now you notice this is underlined in red. Why is that? It says that in order for us to call the parent class's constructor, it needs to be the first statement in the constructor. So we're going to take this and actually move it after the call. And now we're good. So when we try and build a cat, we're going to use the code in the constructor of animal, then we're going to change the type to cat. We're going to do the same thing here. And we're going to do the same thing here. So now we have a way to make the cat. So let's scroll down. Let's see what we have here. Looks good. Oh, sex is underlined in red because it's private. So we need to go back here and we need to change this to protected. Now notice we didn't change age to protected because so far we don't need it. If we do need it in the cat or in another class like dog or whatever, we'll change it to protected. But for now, let's keep it as private. Okay, time to fill in the driver so we can test. So here we are in the start method. Let's create a new cat. We'll pass in Felix. Let's create another new cat. Garfield, Sylvester, and we'll make them C2 and C3. And they should be able to do everything that we wanted them to do. Let's create a pet store also. And we're going to add these cats to the pet store. And then let's listen to them all. Let's listen to them all. So what was the method that we wrote on the pet store? I believe we wrote visit all, so they can all talk. We also have inventory, so maybe we'll just do inventory. Let's go here. We'll do p.inventory. Okay, and now let's do a reproduce. Let's just have two cats reproduce. So let's say we do, we'll have C1 reproduce with C2 to create a new cat, and the new cat's name will be kitty cat. And we're going to take that cat. Instead of putting it in a new variable, we're just going to do p.add. Actually, no. Yeah, p.add. And there we go. And let's do the inventory again. Okay, let's test, see how it goes. Okay, Felix, Garfield, Sylvester, perfect, perfect, perfect. And when they reproduce, they now have kitty cat. Let's try it again. Once again, Felix and Garfield are opposite sex, so they were able to reproduce. Let's try it again. Let's see if we can get one where they can't reproduce. All right, that worked again. Remember, it's random, so we have to just keep trying. No. Eventually we'll get it. There we go. Now you notice here we've added a null cat, right? So we kind of end up with a little bit of an issue. So what we should do is we could do one of two things. We can either check to see if the cat is null here before adding it to the pet store. Or in the pet store, in the add cat method, we could just say if, oops, let's go to the beginning here. We could say if our cats is not equal to null. Then we'll add it to the pet store. Sorry, not cats, cat. There we go. Okay. So this way we're checking all the cats that come in to see if they're null, just in case. So now if we run, whoops, I'm sorry. Run. And here we go. Here we have male, male. They can't reproduce, so we don't have this null cat anymore. But if we run again, now again, male, male. Let's try it again. Female, male. Now the cat can reproduce, and now we have a little baby cat. Okay, now it's time to see why we did all this. Why did we bother? When we had this thing working before, why did we take all the code out of cat and put it into animal just so we can just inherit it from animal and then get it all back in cat anyway? Well, that's because now we're going to create a dog. And when we create our dog, we're not going to want to duplicate all of this code. So let's create a new class called dog. Okay, here it is. And now let's go into cat. See, now we can go into cat. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste all of this code into dog. Of course, we're going to have to make some modifications. The class name is dog. The constructor is dog. And of course, the type that we're passing in is dog. So let's change that. Okay, so we've duplicated the constructors, but not all of the constructors. Like, look at the code. We're not duplicating the fact that we're making a random sex, we're setting the age to 0, all of the real logic. We're not duplicating any of that. All we're doing is we're creating a constructor saying, do what you're supposed to do that was written in the animal, and by the way, the type's dog. Do what you're supposed to do in the animal class, and by the way, the type is dog. That's all we're doing. So we're really not duplicating any code. Now in the talk method, that's custom for each animal, so the talk method will be, okay? And of course, in the reproduce method, we no longer want to return a cat. We don't want to pass in a cat. And just for consistency, well, not consistency, just to make it a little more realistic, we're not going to call the variable kitty. We should probably call it puppy. And there we go. That's all we have to do in order to create a dog, because we're inheriting every piece of code that's already here. We don't have to duplicate any of this. So now if we go to our pet store and we have, instead of an array list of cats, we can also have an array list of dogs. In our constructor, we have to create the array list. We have an add cat method. Well, we're also going to need an add dog method. So let's copy that. Why is this? Oh, because I didn't change the type. There we go. Okay. So now we have an add dog method. We have a sell cat method. We need a sell dog method. All right, we need that as well. Okay, now in our inventory method, we're going to loop through the cats, but we're also going to loop through the dogs. Okay, in our visit all method, we're going to do the same thing. All right, and there we go. Let's check it out. Okay, so far so good, but we forgot something. We forgot to actually, in our driver, to create some dogs. So let's say that we create a dog, D1. Okay, we have Pluto and Goofy. Okay, so we've added our cats. Let's add the dogs. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we got here. We got Felix, Garfield, Sylvester. We have Pluto and Goofy. And here's our inventory. The only thing that I kind of don't like is that we don't know what kind of animal each one of these are. I mean, we can kind of tell by the names if you know the characters, but we really should print it out. So what we should do is let's just take a look here. When we call the inventory method, what we're doing is we're printing the cats and the dogs. So now let's go to the animal. When we do our toString and we print the name, the age, and the sex, we should probably print the type. So let's print the name, the type, We're going to keep it consistent. We'll have parentheses here and here. And here we go. That should do it. Let's run, see what we get. And there we go. Now we can, it tells us, oh, and what's this? Oh, we put a plus sign here. There we go. That's better. Okay. And there we go. Felix is a cat, age 0, male, and so on and so forth. Now you can see what type each animal is. And we can also, if you want, in the driver, not just do the inventory, but we could also call this method. We can make sure that the talk is working. And there they are. Perfect. Now there's one thing that I have to mention regarding this. We have this class cat, we have this class dog, but we also have this class animal. So what happens if we actually try and instantiate a variable of type animal? And then we can print animal. System that out. Well, let's see what happens here. We get this unnamed animal, an unknown type, and it has an age and a sex. Now, that doesn't really make sense, right? We have this animal class that's a parent of cat and dog. We can instantiate cat and dog, but we shouldn't be able to instantiate animal, but it's a class. So how do we stop it? Well, if we go into the animal class, we can put a keyword here called abstract. And what this abstract keyword says is, yeah, this is going to be a normal class just like every other class, but you can't instantiate any objects of this type because it's just an abstract class. It's just a class in theory, and the actual classes that we're going to be using are the children, cat and dog. So if we come back to our driver, you can see here that now we have an error. And it says animal is abstract, it can't be instantiated. That prevents this from happening. Now, the other thing we want to do is we said in our slide presentation that we wanted to add a couple of things to dog. We want to add, in addition to all this custom code here, which is talk and the constructors, we want to add some stuff like private boolean, has bone, have bone, I think is what we called it. And then in the constructor, we want to set that to false because the dog doesn't have a bone. Okay, unfortunately we have 3 constructors, we're going to have to do that 3 times. And there we go. Now in the talk method, we could say woof, and then we could say maybe if the dog has a bone, we could say woof, and then he's chewing on the bone also. So let's do that. Let's say if have bone is true, then what we'll do is we'll print, let's see, let's just copy this code. And woof, chewing on bone. Okay. Otherwise, if they don't have a bone, we'll just print woof. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Now in the pets, oh, and then by the way, we also need a couple of methods. Okay, so this is how we can give the dog a bone, but we should also print something. Okay, but what if the dog already has a bone? So maybe we should have a decision here. If not have bone, then what we're going to do is all this good stuff. Let me indent this code. There we go. All right, now else, what are we going to do? Okay, there we go. And then remove bone, we'll just take the bone away. We don't have to say anything. We'll just set it to false. If he has a bone, we'll change it to false. If he doesn't have a bone, we'll keep it at false. Doesn't really do much. So let's go back to our driver and let's play around with that method now. So let's say here we have a dog. Let's give Goofy the bone. We do the inventory. Let's give Goofy the bone again. Which one was that? That was D2. That should print that he already has a bone. And then we will remove the bone. And then print an inventory. Let's see how it goes. And then we'll print visit all. Let's see how it goes. So here we have all our animals. Oh, Goofy says thanks for the bone. That's great. Here are the animals. Goofy, we give a bone. He already has one. But then we remove the bone. And then when we do this, he just prints woof. Well, what happens if we don't remove the bone? Let's test that real quick. Let's not remove the bone here. Let's see what Goofy says when he talks. Oh, yep, he talks properly. Woof, chewing on bone. And there you go. That's it. You notice in the dog class, we can inherit everything from animal, but then we can also add some custom things. We can add remove bone, give bone. These things don't apply to a cat. These things apply only to a dog. So we put it in the dog class. The things that apply to a cat, we put in a cat class. The things that apply to both, we're going to put in the animal class. That way we don't have to duplicate the code, and that is inheritance. I hope you learned something from watching this video. Please remember to subscribe and share this video with others who are learning Java programming. Thanks for watching, and take care, everyone.